Not every town on the map deserves to be found. Some places exist between the world of the living and the world of the forgotten, and Ilu Age is one of them. They say in the old Yoruba lands, there is a proverb that the elders whisper only after sunset. Ilu ti oni oho, oni poda, a town with no farewell, has no return. Asterisk. Nobody knew what it meant until the traders started disappearing. It began the year the harmattan came early. That dry, dusty wind that rolls in from the Sahara and strips the leaves from the trees like a warning. The year was difficult to name because in this land, time is not counted in numbers but in events. This was the year of the vanishing men. 3 palm wine tappers from Ibadan. 2 cloth merchants from Osogbo. 1 Ifo priest who had gone seeking rare herbs. 6 men. Gone. No bodies. No sandals left behind. No walking sticks abandoned on a path. Just nothing. As though the forest had opened its mouth and swallowed them whole. The only thing the 6 men had in common. They had all asked for directions to Ilu Age. Now, you must understand something about Ilu Age before we go further. Because this is not just a story of fear, this is a story of knowledge. And knowledge, as our ancestors understood, is the only weapon that outlasts the grave. Ilu Age asterisk, translated from Yoruba, means the town of witches. But do not be fooled by the word witch as the foreigners translated it. In Yoruba cosmology, age does not simply mean an evil woman who flies on brooms. No. Age refers to a spiritual force, ancient, feminine, and immeasurably powerful, that governs wealth, the night, and the hidden forces of the earth. The age are said to be women who received a second soul at birth, the Emi Inu, the inner spirit, that carries the memory of the world before creation. They are feared not because they are evil. They are feared because they are beyond judgment. And in Ilu Age, every woman, from the girl who had just learned to walk, to the grandmother too old to lift her own eyelids, every single one of them carried the Emi Inu. This was their town. Their sanctuary. Their court. And no man had ever entered it and left the same. Our story follows a young man named Adisa. Adisa means, the one who is clear, the one who makes things plain. And he was exactly that, sharp-eyed, quick-tongued, and dangerously curious. He was 19 years old, the only son of a widow, and he had recently completed his apprenticeship under a master carver in the town of Abeokuta. He was not a foolish boy. He was not reckless. He was simply unafraid of what he did not yet understand. That was his gift. And as you will soon discover, that was also his curse. Adisa had heard the stories about Ilu Age his whole life. Every market woman who sold pepper near his mother's house had a version. Every hunter who came back from the deep forest had a warning. But it was his mother's dying words that set everything in motion. She had called him to her bedside 3 nights before she passed, her breathing slow and rattling like dry seeds in a gourd. She had pressed something cold into his palm, a small, carved wooden pendant in the shape of an eye with 9 lines radiating outward like the rays of a dark sun. "This belonged to your grandmother," she had whispered. "And her grandmother before that. Take it to Ilu Age. Find the woman called Mama Arode, tell her the debt is complete." "What debt, Mama?" Adisa had asked. But she had already closed her eyes. And just like that, Adisa had a destination. He asked no one for directions to Ilu Age. He had learned early that the moment you ask for the location of a forbidden place, you become responsible for what finds you there. Instead, he followed the pendant. He held it in his closed fist as he walked, and he noticed, slowly, impossibly, that the wood grew warm or cool depending on his direction. Warm when he walked east. Cool when he turned west. He followed the warmth the way a blind man follows a voice. For 2 days he walked through the thick, green body of the Yoruba forest. On the first night, he heard drumming. Not ordinary drumming. This was the bata drum, sacred and deep, the kind that is played only for Shango, the god of thunder, or for the Jelid festival that honors the ancient mothers. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere at once, as though the trees themselves were vibrating with it. He did not run. He sat down, crossed his legs, and listened. That was his first test. And he passed it without knowing. On the second day, he came upon a river with no name. Or rather, a river whose name had been deliberately forgotten. The water was the color of old bronze, moving slowly like something that was not fully awake. On the bank sat an old woman weaving a basket from reeds. She did not look up when Adisa approached. "Good afternoon, Mama," he greeted, bowing respectfully in the Yoruba way, his right hand touching the ground. The old woman said nothing for a long moment. Then, "You smell like someone who has been expected." Adisa's skin tightened. "I am looking for Ilu Age," he said carefully. "Ilu Age does not need to be looked for," the woman said. "Ilu Age finds you. The question is, are you ready to be found?" "I carry something for Mama Arode," Adisa said. At this, the old woman finally looked up. Her eyes were the color of the river, bronze and ancient and slow. "Cross here," she said, pointing to a shallow part of the river where flat stones broke the surface. "But do not look at your reflection in the water. Do not speak your own name aloud. And whatever you see moving beneath the surface, do not count it." "Why not?" Adisa asked. "Because the things beneath this river are still learning how to be," she said. "If you count them, they become real. And what lives in this river was never meant to be real in the world of men." Adisa crossed. He kept his eyes on the stones beneath his feet. He did not speak. And though he felt movement beneath the water, slow, large, and deliberate, he fixed his gaze forward and refused to count. When he reached the other bank and turned to thank the old woman, she was gone. Only her half-woven basket remained, still moving on its own, the reeds threading themselves together in the afternoon light. He smelled the town before he saw it. Not a foul smell, that is what surprised him. He had expected rot, or the iron salt smell of blood, or the thick sweetness of decay. Instead, Ilu Age smelled of night-blooming flowers, deep, heavy, intoxicating, the kind of scent that makes your eyes heavy and your thoughts slow, like the moment just before sleep. He came through a gap in the trees and stopped. Ilu Age was beautiful. That was the first horror. Red-earthed compounds with freshly swept courtyards. Walls painted in indigo and white with geometric patterns, zigzags and spirals, and the same red eye that hung around his neck. Enormous Iroko trees draped in white cloth at their bases, offerings left for the ancestors. Children playing with clay marbles in the red dust. Smells of palm oil stew and roasting corn. A village like any other. A village utterly unlike any other. Because in Ilu Age, there were no men. Not a single one. No old men sitting under trees arguing about the past. No young men carrying firewood or chasing goats. No male children, no male elders, no male voices anywhere in the soundscape. Only women. Only daughters. Only the age. And every single one of them, from the girl with the clay marbles to the grandmother grinding pepper in the courtyard, was already looking at Adisa. Not with hostility. Not with welcome. With the calm, patient assessment of those who have been watching you for much longer than you have been watching yourself. A woman of perhaps 40 years detached herself from the watching crowd and walked toward him. She moved with the unhurried certainty of someone who has never needed to rush, someone for whom time itself adjusts. She wore white, the deep, warm white of fresh cotton, and her head was wrapped in cloth the color of midnight. Around her neck hung so many strings of beads that they rustled against each other like a soft, continuous whisper. "You are Adisa," she said. "Son of Folik. Grandson of Ayabo." "Yes," he said. His voice was steadier than he felt. "We have been waiting for you for 11 years, she said. "Your mother should have brought you sooner. But the living always think they have more time than they do." She paused. "I am Ina, I will take you to Mama Arode." She turned and walked. He followed. As they moved through the town, Adisa noticed things he could not explain. In one compound, 3 women sat around a clay pot, their eyes closed, moving their lips in perfect unison, no sound coming out, but the air around them shimmering slightly, the way air shimmers above hot coals. In another compound, a young woman was painting the wall, but she had no brush. She pressed her bare palm to the white surface and colors bloomed from her hand like ink dropped in water, spreading into complex patterns he had never seen. "What are they doing?" he whispered to Ina. "Working," she said simply. "What kind of work?" She glanced at him sideways. "The kind that keeps the world from tearing itself apart. The kind that men never see because they mistake the absence of noise for the absence of labor." He had no answer for that. They arrived at a compound larger than the others, enclosed by a low wall of packed earth that had been smoothed until it shone like dark skin. The gate was made of 2 enormous iroko branches bound together with chains of copper. Ina stopped. "Before you enter," she said, "I must tell you something. Not as a warning. As education." She turned to face him fully. "The aged are not what the frightened tell stories about. We do not eat children. We do not cause drought or disease out of spite. We are the Ayami Osaranga, the great mothers, the first consciousness that existed before Olojuma shaped the world. We agreed to be born into human bodies so that the world could have balance. Every witch hunt your people have celebrated. Every woman burned or drowned or driven out of her village. Those were not victories over evil. Those were attacks on balance. And the world always, always, recoils when the balance breaks." Adisa thought of his own village. Of 3 women who had been accused of witchcraft in his lifetime. An old woman whose only crime was knowing too much about herbs. A young widow whose husband had died of a chest sickness. A girl who had been born with a caul over her face. He felt something shift inside him. "I understand," he said. Ina looked at him for a long moment. Then she pushed open the copper chain gate. Inside, sitting on a low wooden throne carved with the faces of women, was Mama Arode. She was ancient. Ancient in the way that certain rocks are ancient, not fragile, but compressed, dense with time. Her skin was so dark it had an almost blue quality in the afternoon light. Her hair, white as egret feathers, was piled high and threaded with cowrie shells and tiny mirrors that caught the light and threw it back at strange angles. Her eyes were closed. But she said, "Come closer, child of Folek," before Adisa had taken a step. He walked until he stood directly before her. He reached into his shirt and withdrew the wooden pendant, the carved eye with 9 rays. The moment it left his chest, the temperature dropped. Not gradually. Immediately. Like stepping into a river. Every woman in the compound went still. Mama Arode opened her eyes. They were white, completely, solidly white, no iris, no pupil, like hard-boiled eggs, or like eyes that had been replaced with moonstone. "The eye of age," she breathed. "After 3 generations, it has come home." Her white eyes moved to Adisa's face. "Do you know what you are carrying, boy?" "My mother called it a family heirloom," he said carefully. "Your mother told you what she could bear to tell you." Mama Arode reached out a hand with fingers so long and thin they seemed to have 1 extra joint. "This eye was carved from the wood of an iroko that was struck by Shango's lightning and did not burn. Inside it is the IWA, the essence, of your grandmother Ayebo, who was one of us. Who left us. And whose departure cracked something in the order of this town that has been bleeding ever since." "My grandmother was Age?" Adisa asked. "Your grandmother was Age," Mama Arode said. Your mother was Age. You, boy, you carry the Emi Inu in your blood, though it sleeps in you because you were born male. That is the exception. That is the anomaly. And that is precisely why you were chosen to return the eye. The compound was utterly silent. Even the children outside had stopped playing. Even the birds had stopped. When Ayabo left, Mama Arode continued, she took the eye with her. She was in love. Your grandfather was a man of great laughter and little sense, and she chose him over her responsibilities here. We did not stop her. We do not cage our own. But she took the eye, and the eye is the anchor of our ability to cross between worlds. Cross between worlds, Adisa repeated slowly. The Age do not live only in this town, child. We move. We meet in the Igba Iwa, the realm of existence, while our bodies sleep here. We monitor the forest, the markets, the rivers. We sit in the dreams of kings and whisper sense into them. We are the invisible government of everything your people have built. Her voice was flat with fact, not pride. Without the eye, we have been reduced. For 30 years, we have been reduced. And the world has felt it, whether it knew why or not. Adisa thought about the 30 years of conflicts, broken harvest, diseases with no names, community after community tearing itself apart. 30 years. Exactly the span of his grandmother's marriage. He placed the pendant in Mama Arode's palm. The temperature surged back up, not to normal warmth, but beyond. A heat that was not uncomfortable, but was enormous. The mirrors on Mama Arode's hair exploded with light. The women in the compound exhaled as one, a sound like wind through tall grass, like the world breathing after holding its breath for a very long time. And Mama Arode's eyes shifted. Slowly, the white receded like a tide pulling back from a shore, and behind it, irises the color of deep amber, alive and burning with a light that was not quite human. She looked at Adisa. For the first time, she smiled. It was a terrifying smile. Not because it was cruel, but because it contained multitudes. Because it was the smile of something that had existed before the concept of cruelty was invented. Well done, child of Folek, she said. Now, before you leave, we will feed you. And we will teach you. Adisa should have been relieved. He wasn't. Because he had noticed something. While everyone's attention had been on the eye, while that glorious, terrible surge of power had rolled through the compound like a warm wave, one woman had not reacted. One woman, standing at the far edge of the compound near the eastern wall, had taken a step backward. And in her hand, she had been holding something. A second pendant. Identical to the first. They fed him pepper soup so rich and complex it tasted like a conversation, like different flavors arguing and then finding agreement. They gave him palm wine that had been sweetened with something he could not identify but that left him clear-headed rather than drowsy. And Mama Arode thought. She taught him about the 3 types of age power asterisk. The first was age owo, the power over wealth and material things. This was the most commonly known, and the most commonly feared, because people could see its effect. A woman with age owo could bring abundance to a market or dry it up. She could make a farm yield double or make a business collapse. This was the power that made men accuse women of witchcraft whenever their businesses failed, because it was easier to blame the age than to examine their own greed. The second was age I, the power over the living world itself. The forest. The rivers. The animals. Women who held this power were the original ecologists, the original conservationists. They had maintained the Yoruba forest for millennia. When these women were driven out of communities, the forests began to die. Not because of a curse, but because the knowledge died with them. The specific understanding of which plants healed, which trees held the soil together, which rivers ran with what seasonal rhythms. Knowledge dismissed as witchcraft that was actually environmental science practiced in female bodies. The third was age Oran, the power over the border between the living and the dead. These were the most feared and the rarest. Women who could speak to ancestors. Women who could see the moment of death approaching like weather. Women who could, under extreme circumstances, return the recently dead to life for a brief time. Not as zombies or monsters, but as themselves, whole and coherent, for a final conversation, a final goodbye. First, your grandmother, Mama Arode said, held all three. Adisa absorbed this in silence. What about my mother? He asked. Your mother held two. She refused to develop the third. It frightened her. She was not frightened of much, Adisa said, with some sharpness. The strongest people are often frightened of the things most specific to them, Mama Arode said gently. That is not weakness. That is the intimacy of terror. It was nearly evening. The light in Ilu Age had shifted to a deep, saturated amber, the specific gold of a sun setting through forest canopy, and the compound had begun to fill with more women, coming from their day's work, greeting each other, settling children, stoking fires. It looked, in that light, like any beautiful village in Yorubaland. And Adisa could not stop thinking about the woman with the second pendant. He had tried to find her again. She had disappeared into the crowd with a skill that itself felt like power, not running, not hiding, simply becoming invisible in plain sight. He pulled Ena aside when Mama Arode was speaking with another elder. There was a woman, he said quietly. Eastern wall of the compound. During the ceremony with the eye. She stepped backward. And she had a pendant exactly like the one I brought. Ena's expression did not change. But something moved behind her eyes. Something fast and small, like a fish disturbed in clear water. Describe her, Ena said. Tall. Younger than most here, perhaps 30 years. Red cloth. Scar on her left jaw, shaped like a crescent. Ena was quiet for 4 full seconds. That, she said carefully, is Oseni Kemi. Who is she? She is the reason the eye should have been returned 11 years ago. Before Adisa could ask more, a sound cut through the evening air. Not a scream. Not a drum. Not a human voice at all. It was the sound of silence spreading. The way a stone thrown into water creates rings, this silence moved outward from a point somewhere in the northern end of the town, swallowing conversation and laughter and the crackling of fires as it came. Ena grabbed Adisa's arm. Her grip was iron. Stay close, she said. Do not reach for anything. Do not eat or drink anything you haven't already eaten or drunk tonight. And whatever you hear, do not follow a voice that calls your name. What's happening? Adisa asked. Oseni Kemi, Ena said, her voice flat with something that was not quite fear but was fear's older, quieter sibling, is reminding us that she has been patient long enough. The night in Ilu Age was not like other nights. There is ordinary darkness, the simple absence of light, which the eyes adjust to within minutes. And then there is the darkness of Ilu Age at night, which is a presence rather than an absence. A thick, breathing, aware darkness that presses against the skin with gentle insistence, as if the night itself is reading you. Adisa sat in the guest house they had given him, a clean, low-ceilinged room with a mat of woven raffia and a single oil lamp, and listened. From outside came sounds that had no names in any language he knew. Not frightening in their volume, actually quite soft, but frightening in their asterisk wrongness. Asterisk, the way a lullaby sung in the wrong key is more disturbing than a scream. A rhythmic clicking that moved around the compound without stopping. A low, continuous tone that seemed to come from beneath the earth. And once, just once, a laugh that started as a woman's laugh and slid into something older and shapeless. He did not sleep. He was still awake when Ena came to his door before dawn. Come, she said. Mama Arode will explain. Mama Arode's compound was lit with oil lamps arranged in a circle, And inside the circle sat 12 women, the elders of Ilu Age, each representing one of the 12 original lineages of the age. Their faces were marked with white chalk, Ifon, the chalk of the ancestors, of ritual, of truth-telling. Mama Arode sat at the center. The eye of age hung around her neck. But it had changed. The wood was now luminous. Not glowing exactly, but present in a way that ordinary objects are not. Like the difference between a candle and the idea of a candle. Sit, Mama Arode said. Adisa sat. I owe you truth, she said. The complete truth. Not the portion of it that is easy. I would prefer the complete truth, Adisa said. Something like approval moved across her ancient face. The eye of age is not an anchor for our ability to cross worlds, she said. I told you that. It is true, as far as it goes. But it is not complete. She touched the pendant. The eye is also a key to a door that should never have been opened, and was opened anyway, 31 years ago. Adisa waited. Oseni Kemi's mother, Mama Arode said, was the most powerful woman in Ilu Age in living memory. More powerful than me. More powerful, perhaps, than anyone in the 6 generations preceding her. Her name was Afinike, and she held age orans so completely that she could hear the dead not just when she called them, but constantly, a perpetual congress of ancestor voices, woven into her every moment. That sounds like madness, Adisa said carefully. It would have been madness. Except that Afinike was strong enough to hold it, to organize the voices, to sort them, to give them space and send them back. She was extraordinary. Mama Arode paused. Until your grandmother left and took the eye. Without the eye, Afinike could no longer maintain the door between worlds. The ancestors did not wait behind the closed door, they pushed through. All at once. 30 years of dead voices pouring into a single living woman. Mama Arode closed her eyes briefly. She lasted 6 months. And when she died, the door did not close behind her. It simply stayed open. Open, Adisa repeated. Open. Silence. Oseni Kemi was 3 years old when her mother died, Mama Arode continued. She was raised here, in Ilu Age, by all of us. We tried to teach her balance. We tried to prepare her for the responsibility of sealing the door. Because she inherited her mother's power, perhaps even more of it. She is, without question, the most powerful woman alive today. She is also deeply, comprehensively, and justifiably angry. She blames my family, Adisa said. She blames the eye. She has spent the last 11 years, since she came of age and understood what the eye could do, trying to acquire it. Not to seal the door. Then what? Mama Arode's amber eyes were steady and terrible. She wants to open it completely, not a crack. Not a door. She wants to dissolve the boundary between the living world and the world of the dead entirely. She believes that if the dead can walk freely among the living, then what happened to her mother becomes impossible because there is no door to maintain. No wall to crumble. But that would be, Adisa stopped. The end of death as a concept, Mama Arode finished. Which sounds, to a grieving child who grew up without a mother, like salvation. And is, in fact, catastrophe. Life and death are not enemies, Adisa. They are the 2 legs of the same body. Remove either one and nothing can walk. Adisa thought about this. The second pendant, he said. She has a duplicate. She made it. She is skilled enough to do that. But a copy, however perfect, is not the original. To open the door fully, she needs the true eye. Mama Arode touched the pendant at her throat. Which you brought us tonight. The silence that followed was the loudest silence of Adisa's life. So he started. You delivered it directly to the place where it will do the most damage if she takes it, Mama Arode said, with the particular tone of someone who has already made peace with irony. Yes. Then why didn't you take precautions? Why didn't you? Because we did not know about the duplicate until tonight. For the first time, something like vulnerability moved across Mama Arode's face. A subtle softening, a fracture in the composure of centuries. We have been watching for the eye coming from outside. It never occurred to us that Oseni Kemi would wait for it here. That she would let it come to her. She's been here the whole time. She never left. She is one of us, Adisa. She was born here. She was raised here. She loves us. Mama Arode's voice shifted into something quieter and more devastating. She is destroying what she loves because she cannot find another way to heal from the loss of what she loved first. That landed in Adisa like a stone dropping into deep water. He knew something about that. He had watched his mother die. He knew what it did, the way grief crawled inside you and found your most important beliefs and began, quietly, methodically, testing their structural integrity. He knew what it meant to look at the world after loss and think, this system is broken, and I am the only one willing to say so. He understood Oseni Kemi. And that understanding was the most frightening thing that had happened to him yet. From outside the compound came a sound. The clicking sound from the night before, but no longer moving in a circle. Moving inward. Mama Arode rose from her throne with a speed that belied her age, not standing up so much as arriving at standing, the way a flame arrives at height. She comes, she said. Adisa, listen to me carefully. The eye is necessary to seal the door permanently. That is why your grandmother was entrusted with it, because she was going to live outside the town, and an anchor works better at a distance. But there is a second function of the eye that even I have not used in my lifetime. What function? If the eye is held by someone who carries the Emi Inu, the inner spirit, and who speaks the Ofo Asc, the word of command, it does not merely seal the door. She looked at him directly. It can transform the one who opened it. Not punish. Not destroy. Transform. It can take the grief that drove the door open and give it somewhere to go. Convert it into something that serves the living world instead of threatening it. You want me to use it, Adisa said. I cannot use it. I am of this town, she will not approach me without armor. The other women are the same. But you, Mama Arode looked at him with those amber eyes that contain 30 years of compromise and sorrow and hope. You are male. You carry the Emi Inu but incompletely, you are, to her power, almost invisible. You smell of the outside world. You smell of someone who brought the eye freely, without knowing the full story. I smell like an innocent, Adisa said flatly. You smell like someone she might speak to. He walked out alone. Ilu Age at that hour, that strange time between the last dark and the first grey, was utterly still. The oil lamps had gone out. The fires were embers. The night-blooming flowers that perfumed the whole town had closed their petals, as flowers do before dawn, and their absence left the air strangely empty. Oseni Kemi stood at the center of the main compound. She was exactly as he had seen her. Tall, red cloth, the crescent scar along her jaw. The duplicate pendant was in her hand, and in the low grey light, it was pulsing with a dim, desperate luminescence, a fake fire, a copy of warmth. She was looking at the sky. When she heard his footsteps, she turned. They looked at each other. You are Adisa, she said. I watched you arrive. I know, he said. You had a head start. You've been watching for 11 years. Something crossed her face. Then you know what I want. I know why you want it, he said. That's different. She was still for a moment. Give me the eye. It's not mine to give, he said. It never was. It was your family's fault that my mother is dead, Oseni Kemi said. Her voice was steady. Terrifyingly steady, the steadiness of a grief so long refined it had become structural, a load-bearing wall of the self. Your grandmother. Her vanity. Her small human love story. And my mother paid for it with 6 months of being drowned in the voices of every person who had ever died, all at once, all the time, until she simply could not. She stopped. I know, Adisa said. And I'm sorry. The simple directness of it seemed to surprise her. I'm sorry, he said again. Not as an apology that covers or excuses or resolves. Just, I am sorry that it happened. I am sorry that you grew up without her. I am sorry that you have been carrying this alone in the middle of a town full of women who love you and couldn't reach you because you had built the grief into armor. Oseni Kemi's breath changed. Not breaking, not yet, but shifting. A hairline crack in the foundation. You don't know me, she said. I know what it is to watch a mother die, he said. And to be given a task by her last breath that sends you somewhere dangerous that you don't fully understand. If you open the door completely, he said carefully, the world Mama Arode described, the one where death stops, that world is one where your mother is still accessible. I understand why that seems like it would feel better. But it's also a world where she can never rest, where she is perpetually on call. Where the thing she exhausted herself trying to manage for 6 months becomes permanent, for her, and for every other dead person who has earned their peace. Oseni Kemi closed her eyes. She doesn't get to rest, she said, and her voice finally broke, not spectacularly, not with tears, but with the quiet, devastating break of a word that has been held in clenched teeth for 30 years finally being allowed to be spoken. She's still there. I can feel her. At the door. Waiting. Waiting for what? Adisa asked. I don't know. I think, he said, she's waiting for the door to close. So she can go. Oseni Kemi opened her eyes. He reached into his shirt and withdrew the Eye of Age. He held it out, not to hand to her. Alongside her. Adjacent. Mama Arode says if the eye is held by someone with the Emi Inu and the right word is spoken, it doesn't just seal the door. It transforms the grief. She said she cannot do it because you've armored against her. But you, he looked at her. You could hold both. The true eye and the copy. The real and the reflection. The original power and the grief that tried to replace it. A long, long moment. He did not look away. And Oseni Kemi, the most powerful woman alive, the motherless child inside the armor, the one who had waited 30 years to collect the debt of loss from a universe that did not negotiate, reached out her hand. She placed it around the eye. He kept hold too. And in the grey pre-dawn light of Ilu Age, both of them spoke the Ofo ASC. Not because Adisa had been taught it, but because it rose up through his bloodline, through the Emi Inu sleeping in him, through his grandmother and his mother. And every woman before them who had carried the same unfinished business across lifetimes. The door, somewhere beneath the world, shuddered. And closed. Not silently. With a sound like the last note of a song held until the breath runs out. The duplicate pendant in Oseni Kemi's other hand dissolved, not dramatically, not in fire or smoke, simply unmade itself, quietly, returning to the possibility it had come from. And Oseni Kemi exhaled. The longest exhale Adisa had ever witnessed. Like something that had been held since she was 3 years old finally releasing. She did not fall. She did not weep. She simply became, for the first time, a woman standing calmly in the early light. She's gone, she said quietly. Properly gone. Yes, he said. It hurts more, she said, with some surprise. It always does at first, he said. When you stop pressing on the wound. The women of Ilu Age came out of their compounds as the sun rose. There was no celebration. No drums. This was not, in their understanding, a victory, it was a correction. An overdue settling of accounts. They greeted Oseni Kemi with the specific kindness of those who have been patient for a long time and are willing to be patient a little longer. They gave Adisa new sandals, his had been ruined on the river stones, and a meal of oji and fresh fish and more of that extraordinary palm wine. Mama Arode found him sitting alone at the gate as the morning settled. "It is time for you to go," she said. "I know," he said. She stood beside him, looking at the tree line where the forest began. "You handled Oseni Kemi with great wisdom," she said. "More than I expected from a 19-year-old with no training." "You expected less," he said. "I expected adequate. You delivered something else." She was quiet. "Your grandmother would be proud." He thought about the woman he had never met, the age who had chosen a laughing man over her responsibilities, who had spent 30 years knowing what that choice had cost, who had sent her daughter and then her grandson to pay a debt she could never pay herself. He thought about choices. He thought about how every choice is also a consequence. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You can ask me anything," Mama Arode said. "I will answer everything I am permitted to answer, which is most things but not all. The Emi Inu in me. The sleeping one." He looked at her. "Will it always sleep?" "That," Mama Arode said, "depends entirely on what you choose to learn and who you choose to become." She turned to face him. Her amber eyes were warm and serious and full of the compressed time of her years. "There has never been a male age. Not in the history of our lineage. It is not impossible. It is simply unprecedented. The world changes. The age have always changed with it." She tilted her head. "Or you could go home. Become a carver. Make beautiful things. Live a good life. The Emi Inu may sleep forever and you will still live well." "And if it doesn't sleep?" he asked. "Then," she said, with that terrifying, multidimensional smile, "you come back." He walked away from Ilu Age as the sun climbed. He had the new sandals. He had empty hands. He had the memory of the awful ASC rising through him like a tide. He was halfway to the river when he felt it. In his chest, not pain, not warmth. Something more specific than either. A vibration, low and resonant. Like the batter drum he had heard on the first night, now playing from inside his own ribcage. He stopped walking. He pressed a hand flat to his sternum. The vibration intensified. And then, so softly that he almost dismissed it as imagination, he heard a voice. Not Mama Arode's voice. Not Anna's. A voice he had not heard in 3 weeks. A voice he had buried in red earth under a rain of tears while neighbors wailed around him. His mother's voice. Saying only 4 words. "Adisa. You were chosen." Asterisk. He stood at the forest path, hand on his heart, the trees enormous and ancient around him, the river ahead, the world behind and before and utterly transformed. The Emi Inu in his blood stirred. Not sleeping anymore, asterisk. And Adisa. The one who makes things plain, understood, with the absolute clarity of his name, that his life had just begun. And that he had no idea what it would become. The end, or rather, the beginning. This story is dedicated to all the women across Africa whose knowledge was called dangerous. It was not dangerous. It was just theirs.